We're wrapping up the week that the Arizona Cardinals season came to an end. It feels like forever ago, but it ended on Monday night. It's a Friday edition of Locked On Cardinals. We're going to go through a couple of our favorite moments from the 2021 season. I don't think we're going to mention what the hell happened on Monday night. The Cardinals had 15 players to their roster, and where Steve Keim struggles the most as a general manager in the NFL. It's Bo Brack, it's Alex Clancy. We're talking all about it on Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? It's Locked On Cardinals. Bo Brack, Alex Clancy. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, free and available on all platforms, including our new YouTube channel, nearly at 2K. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Great daily content. I think we're almost at 200 videos, which is absurd to me because it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it. But the fact that we were doing pretty much, we were doing a pregame show sometimes, we were doing halftime each and every game. And of course, we did post-game reaction shows. It makes sense that we had that many videos up and live on our Locked On Cardinals YouTube channel. Check them out. It's divisional round weekend. I hope the divisional round, because I mean, even if you take the Cardinals game out of the equation, it was a lame wild card weekend. There was not a lot of drama. There wasn't a lot of suspense. There wasn't a lot of great games. I think there was 2 games, Alex, that were decided by a score or less. It was the Bengals game and it was the Niners Cowboys game. But other than that, they were blowouts. There was just as many. There were a few more teams with the Cardinals that were kind of scratching their heads and trying to pick up the pieces about what happened last weekend. But the divisional round, it's got to rebound. I always feel like this is the best weekend of the NFL season because you've weeded out some of the fraudulent playoff teams, the ones that kind of snuck in, the Steelers, the Eagles, omit some team that didn't play very well in their playoff game. But
Thank you.
But the division round, this is where you have, the best remaining teams pitted up against each other, and you can really see some electricity when you turn on the games this weekend.
Yeah, because we saw enough from the blowouts to show, what, these teams are legit. Like, I still think it's going to be Tom Brady until it's not. I didn't want to talk about that during the regular season because obviously you hope the Cardinals can go as far as possible. I think it's Tom Brady until it's not. But when you saw what Buffalo did running the ball, like they couldn't define running the ball the last 2.5 seasons. They just threw the ball 50 times a game or ran the ball with Josh Allen. If they run the ball with Devin Singletary and they do it effectively, they're definitely going to be in the Super Bowl. Like, it's going to be so interesting to see them versus, who are they playing again?
Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, Bills, Kansas City. Yeah, obviously. So they're going to, like, their Super Bowl, in essence, could be this weekend. And then you have the Bengals, like, oh my God, man. Like, there's so many good young quarterbacks in this league. It just shows that the NFL's in good hands. I think you're right. Because you're right. I think you're right. Because there's a good amount of games, and they're all going to be competitive instead of just being 2 games, next week. I think you're right.
It's interesting when you looked at the overall playoff picture, the 14 teams that made it. The 11 of their coaches were offensive minded. 11 of 14 coaches. I mean, it used to be like the old cliche, defense wins championships, and I think last Super Bowl proved that it still remains true. You've got to be able to play on that side of the ball and make enough stops to get the W. But I mean, this day and age, as far as the NFL goes, it's offense, and it's also quarterback play. And you look at the quarterbacks remaining in the dance, you got to hope at some point Kyler Murray can shake off the, whatever happened on Monday night and reach the level of these quarterbacks. So, I mean, only really Joe Burrow is the guy that's the newcomer to the party and maybe early ahead of schedule. But it's going to be the best weekend in sports. If you want to gear up for those games, check out all the respective podcasts for the teams playing Saturday and Sunday. Also check out Alex and Tyler Rowland on Thursday's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Great info and insight there from Tyler.
So, and who was it that tweeted out to you that said stop slurping Tom Brady?
Yeah,
Who was it?
Just some random.
It's
Twitter.
me. It's
Yeah,
not Bo. It's me.
There are two Cardinals hosts represented on the Locked On NFL podcast on different days, so please don't start blaming me for the things that Alex is saying.
Like he's the greatest damn quarterback ever. All right, we've wasted 5 minutes.
There's a couple teams that remain in the dance that the Arizona Cardinals played 4 times this season. The LA Rams, I'm sorry, 5 times. The LA Rams 3 times, and then, of course, the San Francisco 49ers. Were games against those teams one of our favorite moments? Were there a couple favorite moments from those contests? Let's get into that conversation. The Cardinals did add a couple players just the other day. And where's Steve Keim? Like, truly, like, what's his worst department as a general manager? And it's going to be tough to kind of just break it down because he struggles in 2 areas pretty mightily, and then he thrives in one. Is it good enough, for the Cardinals to hang on to the GM who's been in the organization for over 20 years and held the position for since 2013? Before we get into the favorite moments, just some from housekeeping here. The Cardinals signed 15 players to their roster for future contracts. Nobody really there's one name that stood out to me. Everybody else has been in and out at the doors of the facility, like a Jace Whitaker, the corner. You had Breon Borders who played cornerback for a couple snaps a couple weeks ago. You have Coda Martin, the offensive lineman. But one guy that stood out was Jalen Samuels, who used to be the backup running back for James Conner in Pittsburgh. And he kind of carried the load for a Pittsburgh team. It was pretty decent down the stretch when he was getting some carries. Versatility, can catch the football. I like it. I think it's a good future contract addition if he even makes the squad next year.
Yeah, for sure. He won a lot of fantasy championships a handful of years ago because you could play him with the tight end or running back. Ben Roethlisberger didn't throw past 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. Then most of them were to Jalen Samuels. He was a PPR just dream. And yeah, I'm surprised he's not rostered. Like, I know a lot of this is systemic, which where players play and if they can fit in the system, it'll work. But I mean, I feel like he'd be a good addition. Yeah.
Yeah. Some pretty brutal numbers as far as Steve Keim's draft resume. We'll get into that as I mentioned with his just eye-popping, sad, make you feel pain here on a Friday. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. But BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue to march through the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains your number one spots and the best sports wagering action in 2022. New year, new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today, get your 50% welcome bonus. That means if you put in $100, you'll get $50 free to help build your stack throughout the playoffs and up to the big game. Like you could just throw it all on the big game if you want. Just use the promo code Locked On. Football, basketball, hockey, UFC, boxing, your favorite Vegas casino games. Take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline's the fastest, easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's Bo Brack, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Getting the insight, getting the opinions, getting the debate about your favorite team, the Arizona Cardinals. The Locked On Network is going to be represented at Radio Row, which is the week leading up to the big game, to the Super Bowl. And it's just where all sports media, they just convene at one spot, usually one convention center in the city of the Super Bowl host site. And they talk to the biggest celebrities and athletes in the world. And the Locked On Network is going to be represented our friends over at Peacock and Williamson. They're going to be broadcasting live and getting all the great comprehensive coverage for the big game. It's free and available on all platforms. Check it out. All right, so we've been pretty negative, and I don't think if you're realistic, if you're just trying to have a real conversation about what happened to the Arizona Cardinals, not only this week but down the stretch, you couldn't have just kind of spit shine this turd and been anything less than disingenuous if you tried to be positive. But I think at this point, there are moments from this season that should be celebrated. You can look overall statistically, you can look at steps forward taken by some players, and you can look at a bunch of moments, Alex, that I think helped change a narrative that has lingered far too long for this Arizona Cardinals team. They do have a long way to go, but they took a couple baby steps forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of when it came down to it, it was kind of a greatest hits album when the actual albums themselves weren't great. So you had a list of things that were definitely things that you can remember fondly, but obviously the result was a big Travis Shea mockery. So I tweeted this out asking people what their favorite memories were, and these are some of the responses I got, and they're interesting. So, one of them, and this was one that I saw a couple times, the Isaiah Simmons goal line stand against Trey Lance, 17-10, which was huge because the game ended up being a touchdown difference. And then obviously, I think, but one of Bo's favorite memories, and one of mine also, was it was the first game of the year against Derrick Henry, Isaiah Simmons goal line stop on Derrick Henry, which, looking back at it in week one, it's like, is this the Isaiah Simmons we're going to see this year? Is this going to be the beginning of the all-world perennial Pro Bowl Isaiah Simmons? Unfortunately, didn't get all the way there. The Minnesota game where they were down, and then they ended up taking the lead at halftime on I believe it was the Rondale Moore broken play touchdown. And then just a lot of James Conner. Conner.
I mean, to get back to the Vikings game, all the way back in week 2 as they went down, but then they steadily came back. What was it, 20-3 at one point in that contest? Was it right? DeAndre Hopkins absolutely just making burnt toast of P3, Petty Patrick Peterson, after everything that he had said. And then, the 77-yard touchdown to Rondale Moore that P3 on his podcast made sure that he was not blamed for. That stands out to me. But, sweeping the San Francisco 49ers, I think that can stand out as a good moment for Cardinals fans. That's a team and a fan base that sometimes can be tough to take, sometimes nauseating. And now, they have more fuel for that fire as they made their miraculous turnaround. But the Arizona Cardinals were able to get both games from them. I think week 4 against LA, I mean, as far as kind of shocking the world after the Rams coming off dismantling the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and riding high, the Arizona Cardinals, 2 undefeated teams, go into this contest. They hadn't beaten McVay ever, and they worked them. They beat them in every facet in that game, and that probably was my favorite game to watch. And there was a ton of great moments in that game that I'll take away.
Yeah, the Minnesota game was the first game where, and it was very early in the season, was like oh man, is this going to be different? Because those are things, with the Greg Joseph miss at the end, it's just those things don't happen for the Cardinals, and haven't happened in recent memory. I hate when people say, "Oh, poor us. It's the Cardinals. Things don't go right." They haven't drafted well. They've had bad coaches. They've had bad players through the entirety of their existence. And obviously, that's not necessarily. I mean, they've had good players, but not all at the same time. Not for a long time. But the thing with that, where it's so they're down 23. As you mentioned, they come back. Everything. Kyler Murray looks electric. Everything looks great. Everything looks like it's humming. And then what happens? The Cardinals have a chance to run out the clock, 3 and out in under a minute, and it gives Minnesota the ball back, and a 35-yard field goal is missed. But it's at that point, you're like, oh man, this could be special. Then Jacksonville with a pick 6 with Byron Murphy, everything started to hum. 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. And it seemed like, even though the Cardinals were 10-2, so they went 3-2, or they went 3-2 after starting 7-0. With AJ Green not turning around, that now seems like when the second part of the season started for the Cardinals. And it's not that's the reason why, but it seemed like, wait, that's the first time something went wrong.
Yeah.
And
so many
just wild.
So many things went right in that game that had to for them to even have that drive. I mean, the goal line stand that they made against
Yeah.
Aaron Jones and crew and kept them out of the end zone. And then Kyler Murray was just absolutely just marching the team down the field, and it was shaping up to be his signature moment.
It was third and long from inside the end zone.
Yeah,
and he found AJ Green for a long chunk. Yeah,
for huge move in the chains. Big play by Christian Kirk, and then another one by Chase Edmonds, and then they're just knocking on the door, and then that head up the butt moment happened, which pretty much the national audience came away with remembering. Where I think Cardinals fans remember, like, man, that was almost it. That was almost Kyler Murray's moment, because he was dealing at that point. I think he was like 6 for 7 on that drive, if you include the pick at the end, which I don't know. You got to give a lot of the. It's on AJ Green, I think, on that play, but that was almost the moment there. But the goal line stand gets forgotten, which was unbelievable, and the never say die, response to that from the offense that nearly happened. It's still there. The Browns was shocking, because you went into that game without your head coach, without a couple key members due to COVID, and they crushed the Browns on the road, early kickoff. All the things that people say the Cardinals couldn't do, they're never going to win early games, and they're facing a team in the Browns where they thought, hey, this is probably the contender of these two teams, despite what the Cardinals' record was at that point. So it's I'm trying to think of some other ones. I mean, Colt McCoy coming in, I thought that two of those 3 games were pretty fun to watch. Just the backup quarterback deal a little bit for the Cardinals in Kyler Murray's absence. Those were 2 really fun games to watch, as far as San Francisco and at Seattle, where Colt McCoy, a guy who had 9 wins total as a starter, was able to light them up. Some division rivals. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, both on the road, which is wild.
In Dallas again. I mean, who doesn't like beating Dallas?
Yeah, especially. Oh God, I feel like poor Marcus Mosher and Mr. McCool over there. Yikes. It's like, looking back, it's once things changed, though, they didn't go back. Like the Rams. Was it the Rams loss? Did they lose to Detroit? Who did they lose to before Detroit?
LA.
They lost to the Rams first. Okay.
Monday night.
So, that's right, the Monday night game. So after that, a loss like that, when you're looked at as potentially the best team in football with the rankings and all that stuff, and then that shows the intestinal mental fortitude that a team has to bounce back, even going on the road in an early time slot and playing the worst team in football and losing, not just losing, but losing the way they did. Was it 30-12? Like, they had no chance in that game at all. Mm-hmm. And that was the worst team in football. Okay. And I know DeAndre Hopkins was out at that point, but you know what? That was the sign where it's like, you know what? Something's amiss. Mm-hmm. Something isn't as good as it looks. And, the Dallas game was nice, but what we talked about and what we've continued to talk about is when things go right, the Cardinals can win because they have enough talent. But when one thing goes wrong, when there's one costly turnover, it's like you just can't come back from that. And that's something that good teams deal with better than bad teams.
Yeah, it wasn't even turnovers either. I mean, it wasn't turnovers in the playoff game. I mean, there were costly turnovers once it was 14-0 by the time, we had the awful pick 6, and then it was 21-0. I mean, it might have well been a 28-0 deficit at that point, the way that they were playing. It was just 3 and out. So they just didn't have a lot of resilience, and that's something that they're going to have to figure out. It's not anything that you can find in the draft or find in free agency or via trade for the Arizona Cardinals. But a lot of great moments there were. And if you're watching on YouTube, put in the chat what your favorite moments were for the Arizona Cardinals in the 2021 season. I know it ended on a sour note, but I think a lot of people have a lot of things that they'll remember fondly from this season in 2021 for the Arizona Cardinals. Their general manager, Steve Keim, he's awful in one specific department. Or could I have just done a full stop there before one specific department?
Nice transition.
I've just been deep diving some of his history, and
His follies, as it were.
it's just alarming, and it's concerning when we think about this offseason, and it is, one of the most paramount off seasons of the Kyler Murray era. I mean, as far as what needs to be accomplished, and how many impending free agents they have, and the decisions that they need to make, because they still have a lot of departments that they need to get better in. So the most alarming, and in the biggest place where general manager Steve Keim struggles, you probably know what it is, but we'll tell you all more about it, and kind of put some more context around it next here on Locked On Cardinals. Of course, we want to tell you about the best tasting protein bar. Doesn't struggle anywhere, doesn't struggle in taste, doesn't struggle in nutrition. You get the best of both worlds. And if you got that New Year's resolution to stay or get into shape, well, Built Bar is your secret weapon, because Built Bars, they taste like a candy bar, even better than most candy bars, and they give you all the nutritional benefits that a protein bar would give you. Most protein bars, they're chalky, they're waxy, they sometimes taste like a freaking chemical spill. It's awful. But the Built Bars, they're covered in 100% delicious chocolate, and here's the thing, they're healthy. 130 grams or 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of muscle-packing protein. Compare that to a candy bar, 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs, tons of empty calories. It's just not worth your time. Get a Built Bar, because it absolutely is, and you could save some cash, because we're going to hook you up with a little promo code here. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, that's LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. That's using the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Nailed it.
There you go. Crushed it. Brack, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, last show of the week, but we will assure you we're going to be here all off season long. Things don't change for us. We're doing shows every weekday, Monday through Friday, and we're giving you all the latest news, insight, and commentary on this Arizona Cardinals organization. This is going to be an absolutely awesome offseason. There's going to be a lot of moves made by this organization, because they have to. They have a ton of guys on expiring contracts, so they're going to either have to re-sign those guys or bring in a bunch of new players, and that's always makes for great fodder for us. Steve Keim, though, just really deep diving his draft resume, Alex, and it's ugly. I found a couple. I think the one position group that you can trust Steve Keim in drafting, and then most of them you can't. It's just brutal. The position that he's drafted the most is wide receiver. He's drafted 10 wide receivers. I tweeted this out at Bob Brack, and one receiver has had 1,000 yards in a season. That's it. 1 of 10. I think at this point, if you're Steve Keim, if you're his scouts, if you're anybody in that Cardinals facility, you have to rethink your strategy, your evaluation of the position, because it's wrong. It's been wrong for a long time, and you're not finding any impact makers. And that was evident on Monday night. It's been evident for far too long.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is second round is now the sexy place to draft running backs and wide receivers. Mm-hmm. There are so many.
Yeah.
Like, if he would have drafted not even DK Metcalf, if he would have drafted Deontay Johnson, somebody like that, instead of, who was it instead? Was that the Andy Isabella year? No. I'm mixing up my years. No, DK was. Deontay Johnson was the year before, I think. I think Deontay Johnson was 20. I can't remember. But there's so many. There's so many wide receivers. There's so much scouting that goes involved to people being drafted. And Steve Keim is just inept. He's inept. And that's not harsh. Listen to what my co-host just said. It shows. It's in the numbers. It's not like with Rondale Moore. He knew that Rondale Moore hasn't played a full season since his rookie year, where he broke up, where he shattered all these records. And guess what? Rondale Moore was out over about half the season. And he had 2 good games this year. And now I'm going to put some of that on Cliff. I still think, look at what oh my God. Look at what Campbell did. Devondre Campbell did in Green Bay this year. All pro. Look at what Rashad Breeland did, or Rasul Douglas did after leaving. He was a utility all pro, wasn't he? there's a couple different ways to look at it. It's either coaching or it's drafting. We have to start with drafting players. They're going to make impacts at the NFL level, and Steve Keim hasn't done that.
I got a big issue with him continually drafting guys that are under 6 feet. I mean, when you look at the 1,000-yard receivers, when you look at the league leaders in receiving yards, like you have your exceptions. You have your Tyreek Hills. You have from the past, you have, your Wes Welkers. You have these undersized guys that pop, but they're exceptions to the rule. But usually like Cooper Kupp's 6'2". Everybody that's making plays in the NFL at the wide receiver position, they're winning these physical battles because, they're usually, wide receivers usually are bigger than cornerbacks. And when you look at it, like starting from 2013, he took Ryan Swope, who never suited up for the Arizona Cardinals. He retired because of concussions. John Brown, their one successful wide receiver draft, maybe second. Christian Kirk, I won't call him a bust, but Brown, 5'11", Walt Powell, 5'11", J.J. Nelson, 5'10", Andy Isabella, 5'9", Rondell Moore, 5'7", Christian Kirk, 5'11". The only guys that they've drafted over 6 feet tall, Chad Williams in the third round, didn't get invited to combine, complete bust in the third round. Hakeem Butler at 6'5", drafted in the fourth round, injured his rookie season, cut the next season, and then Keyshawn Johnson, who flashed a couple times in some preseason games and early in some regular season games, he was 6'1". They just don't know how to scout the position. They don't know how to draft the position. And if they haven't made any changes recently, don't even waste a pick at this point. Don't even waste a pick. It's like looking at AJ Green in the red zone. Like, don't do it. It's not successful. It's a low percentage play.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like the 23rd pick is the perfect place to take a wide receiver in the first round. It's like where you warrant it because you're not top 10, you're not top 15. It's like a lot of it's going to be done for you. A lot of your decisions are going to be made for you. The Cardinals have a lot of picks this year. So I wonder if Steve Keim's going to get weird. Like we'll see I don't know if he's going to have a job, so he will. I mean, he's going to retire an Arizona Cardinal GM when he's 30 years from now, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You're right. The wide receiver thing's super interesting. And you carry the flag of he has no idea how to gauge offensive line talent or defensive line talent for that matter. But the wide receiver one is the biggest one. Like I still, with Josh Rosen, I know we got to get out of here soon. With Josh Rosen, I still give him the benefit of the doubt for that pick because nobody thought Josh Rosen was going to be there at 10. Mm-hmm. And the Cardinals were able to move up for not that much. They needed a quarterback. It made sense. Some people had Josh Rosen as the number one overall pick in some mock drafts. Like, I give him the benefit of the doubt for that because I don't think that was in the plans. Robert Kimdiche, same thing. He wasn't supposed to be there at 27 or 29, wherever they 31 or 29, wherever they drafted that year. He wasn't supposed to be there due to his off the field antics. He was supposed to go still in the top 25. The fact that he was there, it was the hand forced. Like I give him the benefit of the doubt for those. But everything else is like, sweet Jesus, man. Like especially Elijah Mitchell, 6th round pick. Yeah. Raheem Mostert. Like these people, like they're everywhere in the NFL. Right. They're everywhere.
And they're on a lot of contending teams. And, that's
how you build contending rosters.
That's the one position though is running back. He's actually had some decent success with running backs. Like he took Andre Ellington in the 6th round in his first draft. He had 2 decent seasons. And you got to consider that the position, the shelf life isn't very long. He took David Johnson, of course, and then Chase Edmonds. Benjamin, I'm not going to deem him in success, but, he's on the roster and all that stuff. So I think as far as the running back position is concerned, I wouldn't mind him getting the running back this year. Wide receiver at 23 scares me just because of his history of drafting at the position. We've got a ton of time to do this all off season long. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to us after the disaster that was Monday night. This is where you're going to get the unbiased and real conversation about this team, the Arizona Cardinals, because we're talking about it from a standpoint of we want this team to get better, and where they fell short, we're going to call them out on that. It's Bo Brock. It's Alex Clancy. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On AZCards, at Clancy's Corner, and at Bob Brack. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games, and we will talk to you on Monday. A new episode of Locked On Cardinals. We'll figure out if we're going to record a day before. I think we're going to get back on the day of schedule here pretty soon, but we'll let you know if anything changes. Just follow along at Locked On AZCards. Have a great weekend.